My name is Neumaier. I'm the founder of the very small nonprofit Find Some Flow. Our focus is on leveling the playing field to ensure that everybody has access to meaningful play experiences. I'll tell you more about our initiative in a second. First, I want you to think about something. In any of the sports or activities in which you've participated, how often have you had the opportunity to collaborate or compete against somebody with a physical disability? Of course, the corollary question is, how often have my disabled friends had the opportunity to compete against somebody who's able? Likely it hasn't happened very often, if at all. Cross-ability competition is incredibly rare at best, even though it's estimated that over 30 million folks in the United States use assisted devices for their mobility, and that's just that one segment of the physically disabled population. These separated experiences indicate to me a deeply systemic level of segregation. Pittsburgh is quickly becoming the adaptive sports and recreation hub of the world, with several dozen disability service centers and advocacy groups, a dozen cutting-edge companies producing innovative equipment and new technologies, and a lot of really badass adaptive athletes and activists. It's no surprise. Nonetheless, ask any parent who has a child with a disability, and they'll tell you one of the greatest challenges that they face is finding opportunities to experience integrative and cross-ability play. Because after all, what do children with and without disabilities have to integrate around? What do they have to build together? What do they have to throw at one another? What do they have to fight about or to argue over? How are we ensuring that our youth with and without disabilities are benefiting from inclusive interactions and all of the creative problem solving and life skills that come from those interactions? Skills that I, as an abled player, had the privilege of gaining on the playground. Our project will turn spaces that are accessible into spaces that are engageable. Our project will turn spaces that are inclusive into spaces that are integrative. Our project, the Traveling Accessible Playground, is touring Pittsburgh area play spaces and bringing with it all of our integrative games, materials, and sports, along with interactive disability awareness information to ensure that Pittsburgh families have the tools that they need to explore integrative and cross-ability play. Our program, the Integrative Game Lab, turns its participants into disability advocates by ensuring that they're able to explore disability, design games, and plan their lives from the perspective of having an impairment. The Global Play Alliance, the world-renowned author and play theorist Bernie DeKoven, and State Senator Jay Costa have all said that we are going to change the world by changing the world of play right here in Pittsburgh. I urge you to join us as we use our locker and our program to revolutionize play spaces, school recess, and physical education. I urge you to join us as we use play to integrate community.
Okay, how about questions from trustees? Any questions? David.
Can you just talk a little bit about the locker itself and what's in it?
So David asked if he could talk a little bit about the locker itself and what's in it.
So what's important to know is that Find Some Flow wouldn't exist if there weren't a really great community full of activists and advocates. And the locker is a perfect example of that. I didn't build the locker. An aspiring Eagle Scout built this locker. And the design from these lockers came from local activists and designers. So when you're designing something, that doesn't exist yet, and you're designing it for a minority group that has accessibility considerations, it takes some time. And we're really privileged that we've been able to basically have donated to us almost all of the materials for this locker, the labor in order to build this locker, and essentially it is a mobile unit. It's on a department store dolly that we've repurposed. It's built mostly out of wood, and it is within it. It is built such that people with any form of mobility impairment, using a wheelchair or a mobility device, people who are blind or visually impaired will still be able to access the locker. So in order to do that, we had to produce other things that don't yet exist. Things like tactile maps. You have to teach somebody who's visually impaired what's in the locker before expecting them to get to the locker. Something that I like to remind people is that we didn't build this locker for the disabled community. The disabled community is an empowered group, and they can empower themselves. This locker's purpose is to raise awareness amongst the abled about this problem of ableism and segregation. This locker is wrapped with signage that encourages folks and provides them with the tools to integrate. Simple things like teaching a child to use American Sign Language to ask another child to play with them. We're doing that through adaptive graphics. Things like learn to read Braille. Things like just basic disability rights and history information. Because what we found is that most people don't even know that the problem exists. They think, oh, there's already accessible playgrounds. When you get on an accessible playground, what happens when there's an abled and a disabled child? They likely don't integrate. That abled kid is not learning anything more about the experience of that disabled player. And of course, that abled student is growing to be an adolescent who doesn't even know to ask the question to his teacher, hey, where the hell are my friends in this classroom? Why aren't they here? They're going on to go to college. They're joining the workforce. Also, they don't even know to ask the question. So the locker is essentially an awareness tool. It serves students and families and children, but it's an awareness tool.
Thanks, Ian. Maybe one more question. There's somebody in the back. Yeah, David.
Yes, this traveling locker, how do I and everyone else know where it's going to be?
So the question was, if this is a traveling locker, how will I and everyone else know where it is and when it's going to be there? And maybe if you could limit your answer to
So right now it's at North Fayette Community Center. All of our information is pretty much published every week on all of our social media platforms. The way that we get this locker to different places is that we collaborate with different community groups. We're broke as a joke. We operate out of a small 2-bedroom condo, so we get this locker wherever we can afford to get it, wherever there's a community member who's willing to interact with us and listen to us. As I said, it's at North Fayette now. There's a lot of accessible playgrounds where this thing could tour, but really all it needs is a flat surface, a basketball court. So my goal is to get this into communities where it can have a greater impact. So we are still looking for the next location of this locker. And we are, if anybody here has a connection to a community center, a park, a playground, a basketball court, a school, please let me know because we need those connections to get this locker to where it needs to be. Thanks.
Thanks, Ian. How about a round of applause for Ian? The winning pitch that is going to get funded this month by Awesome Pittsburgh is the Traveling Accessible Playground. Ian, come on up here. How about a 15-second congratulations?
50 seconds.
Thank you so much, and as I mentioned before, Finds and Flow is nothing if it weren't for the other community activists and advocates that allow us to do what we do. And I think I'm very thankful for being here in Pittsburgh where we can do the stuff that we do.
We're selling t-shirts.
By the way, we're selling t-shirts and everything else goes straight to program.
Great job. And honestly, all of you